everyone. We are coming to you from our 13 on Your Side YouTube channel, coming live to you. We're going to be talking over the next 30 minutes about how COVID-19 has impacted the autistic community here in West Michigan and also in Grand Rapids. And we're going to be talking about services that are available to you and family and friends of anyone who might be affected by autism. And I want to introduce you to our panel that we are going to be talking with today. We have Stephanie Sweeby, who is an assistant clinical director at Gateway Pediatric Therapy. We have Lisa Bingham, clinical director at Gateway Pediatric Therapy in Grand Rapids, and Dave Bukowski, the executive director at Disability Advocates in Kent County, at Kent County. So if you have any questions for them during this time period, you just want to put them in the comment section on the YouTube page, and we'll be sure to get our panelists to answer those for you. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about how autism has been affected during COVID-19. Many things have been affected. People aren't getting as many cancer treatments. They aren't getting as many visits to the doctor, and they're afraid to go out. And this has affected all the communities, including the autistic community. So first, I'm going to throw it out to whomever would like to talk about this, but how has COVID affected those with autism in West Michigan? Dave, do you want to talk about that?
Actually, I need to leave that for Lisa and Stephanie.
Okay, Lisa?
No problem. Definitely with COVID, we've seen a lot of changes in routines, changes in available activities, changes in expectations of what happens in different environments, which has had a huge impact on this autism community, as change in general can be hard, and this change can be tough with these changing expectations and not always knowing or understanding what those expectations are.
And I think with autistic adults or autistic children, they like routine. It's one of those things that really does help to settle them down. And so talk about not having a routine. So Stephanie, how have you been able to continue to help clients through this?
Yeah, good question. I think here at Gateway, we spend a lot of time working with our families individually because each child, each family is impacted. Various routines are impacted differently. So our team, our clinicians have talked with families about what are the present concerns, how can we make adjustments to the treatment plan. We make referrals to the family to speak with their children's educational team. But a lot has to do with looking at presently what are the current needs. And we have modified client treatment goals to help address some of the barriers or skill deficits that the children may be experiencing now. Especially with school being out, their therapy sessions may have changed in terms of location from clinic to home or home to clinic. Things we've worked on have included like tolerating wearing a mask or tolerating when a previously available activity is no longer available. So.
Yeah, and those are some big changes for anybody who has autism or for any family member that might be caring for somebody, whether it's an adult or a child with autism. So you mentioned Gateway, so let's talk a little bit about the services that Gateway offers for those who might not be familiar with Gateway.
Yeah, Gateway is a center that provides applied behavior analysis services. This primarily includes one-on-one therapy that focuses on social skills, communication skills, language, the completion of activities of daily living. We meet with children and their families on an individual basis to work through what their specific needs are, with the goal of improving the life for the child or the adolescent, for the family, continuing to enrich their lives and teach them those socially meaningful skills that may be harder to learn or may be lacking at this time.
So for anybody who may be watching that is affected by autism, Gateway would be a place for them to go to get any sort of help with therapy or any needs with just family support that they may need in order to, you know, have a better family life, better situation, especially now during COVID-19. So let's talk a little bit about this ABA therapy that Gateway has. What is it?
ABA therapy is an approach founded on decades of scientific research. It focuses on the science of human behavior and why we do what we do, and ways to address where a child or where an individual is at the current time. It is considered the single most effective way for individuals to overcome constraints or deficits caused by autism spectrum disorder, and is a way for us to focus on skills that are areas of deficit or need to be worked on, to help support the acquisition of new skills, or to decrease maybe more difficult behaviors that families or children are experiencing at home.
So Stephanie, during this time, what are some of the things that parents can do to help children or their adult children adjust to this new way of life with COVID-19?
I think we said it earlier too, is that routine is quite important. Families are also, parents, caregivers are also working through all of the changes created by COVID-19. And like you said, everything has been impacted. So maintain a clear routine, a clean and clear routine with consistent expectations. It's recommended to plan ahead. So as school has been significantly impacted, and whether it's virtual, hybrid, or in person, those are new expectations that not only the family needs to learn, but they need to help their child through. So that's part of the planning ahead portion. Work with the team of experts that your child may have. Or if you do not have a team, a clinical team, then reach out to a provider such as Gateway. And we can assist with completing that evaluation and assessment to develop a treatment plan to overcome some of the barriers. I think it's important to take your time and know that everyone is working through this all together. This is probably all of our first pandemic. And so nothing is going to be perfect, but you make some changes individualized to your child and your family, and really make adjustments from there.
Stephanie, you talked a little bit about getting your child or your adult child to wear a face mask, which I think would be extraordinarily challenging for somebody with autism, especially if they are touch sensitive. So how do you walk through that? You know, how long, what are your expectations for, you know, this is not something you're going to do 2 or 3 times, maybe even, and get it to work, right? So talk to me about how parents can try to get that manageable, wearing the mask.
Yeah, and that's something too, adults even adjusting to that, and really it's about what we would do is look at, give your child the opportunity to put the mask on. There are a variety of masks, and each one of us may have our own preference, whether it's a cloth mask. There are so many kinds available. You can get your child involved in making that selection of which one works best for them. Have them, you know, put the mask on, see how long they'll tolerate wearing the mask. What areas are particularly challenging, whether it's the tolerance to the ear loops or the way that the cloth fits over your face. And then you develop from there of, like, you identify what can they tolerate, where does your child need help, and then systematically increase whether it's the time that the child is wearing the mask. And
What do you do if you have a child, though, that is not even wanting anything on their face, which I'm sure there are some situations out there where that exists?
Yeah, good question. I think you have to look at what's available on the market to help. I don't know, sometimes a face shield, although it's not a mask, and I'm not a medical provider to give that recommendation, but I would look at speaking with your pediatrician as well. They may have recommendations that would be acceptable in different environments.
Do you have any recommendations for, like, do you just maybe hold it up to their face for 5 seconds, take it away, you know, just to kind of sort of maybe desensitize them? Do you have steps, like helpful steps like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you, I mean, I think you're right on, is that look at where the difficulty lies with the whole process of putting the face mask on. And if it's just the presence of the face mask, you'll work on tolerating that, and then slowly making slow approximations to fully wearing the mask. Each child is going to be different, and there's no set timeline. So take it slow, like praise each step, reward each step, and practice when it's not a time when you have to go out.
Right.
And it's a time where everyone can be relaxed and there aren't any pressures.
I think that's really good advice, Stephanie, because sometimes we are just like, oh, you have to get this on. And if you just start doing it, you know, at certain times, irregular times, whenever you have it, when you don't have to go out, I think that's the best time. And probably when you have the most patience as well.
Absolutely.
So Dave, I want to bring you into the conversation now. Thanks for your patience and sitting so quiet.
It's good to learn. It's always good to learn.
It is good to learn. All right. So once again, Dave Volkowski is the Executive Director of Disability Advocates of Kent County. And I want to talk a little bit about what the Disability Advocates of Kent County is and the services that you provide.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity to be part of this panel. We are a, Kent County based nonprofit, and our generic title through federal and state legislation is Center for Independent Living. Though we are non-residential, so that's one reason why we changed our name almost 20 years ago. We both provide individual supports to people with disabilities of all types. We do a lot of workforce development preparation, especially with high school youth and then adults. And then we do in-home assessments so that people can stay safe at home and as independent as possible. And again, that's especially important during this time, since congregate settings have been most, focused for hotspots for COVID. And then in addition to the individual supports, and there's a number beyond that, we also are unique in that we have a federal and state mandate to do systems change work and advocacy. So it's, if a family with a child with autism was experiencing what they believe is some kind of mistreatment or different treatment or even discrimination, we have staff that would work with that family to address that situation. And we do it on the individual level when there's allegations. Then we also do it through education, helping people understand, again, how best to include and welcome people with disabilities into their business or place of worship. And so that's kind of in a nutshell who we are and what we do.
I know we're talking a lot about how COVID-19 has impacted the autistic community, but you make a good point, Dave, that I want to, for anyone who has maybe a teen or an adult child, I want to make sure that they understand that there are opportunities for work in our community and for them to feel fulfilled and have a purpose. And so can we talk a little bit about some of those that you might be aware of?
Sure. I like to say, in spite of the fact, we have 25 awesome staff members here, we do our best work when we partner with others. There's a new group in town called Beyond 26 that has more time and energy to really focus on helping young adults with developmental disabilities find jobs they like, get connected to jobs. And so they've been very successful. There's I believe they're a for-profit company called Beer City Biscuits or Dog Biscuits.
I've actually done a story with them and they are amazing.
Yeah. So again, there's all kinds of opportunities. And what we do, our main area of focus is bridging that gap. So like some of the skills that Lisa and Stephanie talked about is then helping to translate that into the work environment. How do you express what needs you have, or when you have questions? And so a lot of one-on-one and small group time that our staff have with students and adults. And of course, as you would suspect, a lot of that has moved into the virtual realm the past few months, but we still have, socially distant, all COVID precautions taken into account, small group and one-on-one activities.
So I did want to talk to you a little bit about the ways that the current policy supports those with disabilities, and how maybe that's been highlighted by COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, to point out, what all three of you have mentioned, that it's really making sure that we're treating persons with disabilities, persons with autism as individuals. Just because you have that label autism doesn't mean you're like the person who was just in your office that the moment before. And so as long as we're not generalizing too much in that situation, and still being open and creative, because that's what COVID has taught all of us. The best example we use, and again, sometimes we try not to be, I don't want to say too snarky about it, but that, a year ago, if you were a person with a disability and you asked as an accommodation to work 2 days a week from home, probably 9 out of 10 employers, if not 10 out of 10 employers, would have said, you can't do that. Working from home is impossible. We need you here in the office. Well, today, I mean, there are whole offices, that are, they're not even talking about going back until January, some until May and June of next year. And so COVID has taught us that some of the ways we used to see the world, we do have flexibility. And at the same time, COVID has taught us that we still have significant barriers, because when we talk about our own high school classes with students and one-on-one, the digital divide is huge and real. I mean, do students have the computer technology at home? Do they have the internet? I mean, and working internet. I mean, one of my coworkers had his son in the office, and again, we have all the protocols and everything, and that we have, wearing our masks unless we're in our own office, like I am right now. They have internet. They have a very well-known provider, and they have nothing but issues at home. And this company keeps coming back out and trying to figure it out, and they can't figure it out. So even if you have internet and good computers, let's just say sometimes it doesn't help us as much as we'd like. So it's just keeping that flexibility, remembering why we're getting together, and keeping the dialogue on what's the best way to make that connection happen.
You touched on this a little bit, Dave, and maybe Lisa or Stephanie wants to make a comment on this, but many years ago, I did a story with a young boy. He was 18, and his parents were looking for a safe place where he could maybe have his own life, his own living situation. And one of the things, that story taught me so much about autism, because prior to that, I guess I didn't realize it was really just a label to me. And I didn't fully understand it as much as I thought I did, no matter how much I had read about it. But there's a person inside there that is thinking, that has feelings, that has opinions, that has thoughts. And I think the more that we can recognize the fact that there is an individual inside there, we just have to figure out how to communicate with them. That kind of sort of helps the processes and gives you a little bit more patience with it. And he wrote me the most beautiful thank you note. I mean, albeit it looked like, a child had written it, but it was so thoughtful and so meaningful to me that he took the time to say, thank you for telling my story. It was very well put, and it was just so eye-opening for me to read his journals and to get that thank you note from him. So I think that's an important message to get out there too. I know we are concentrating a little bit on COVID-19 today, but I also feel like it's an opportunity for us to educate everybody about the autistic community. So I don't know if Stephanie or Lisa wants to comment or chime in on that when it comes to seeing people with autism out in our community, how to react to them and how to treat them and how to understand them, most importantly.
I can go ahead and add a little bit to that. I think that we try our best to meet everyone where they're at and include each individual client into the decisions that we're making with how to approach goals, with what skills are important to them that they would like to learn. It's all about treating them with any individual with dignity and respect and giving them the voice that they need to advocate for themselves. And it's just, everyone has their own sensitivities. And so you just always have to look at how can I help this person in the best moment right now. Anyone could be shy. Anyone could prefer not to participate in large group activities, which COVID-19 has broken that apart. But anyone, I think just treating them with respect and dignity. And if you don't know, ask them if it's appropriate, of what is the best way. How can I help you in this particular situation? Just come from a point of seeking to understand and then support them along the way.
So we're about halfway through our panel discussion. So I just want to sort of recap for anybody who might be joining us that we are talking about autism, how it has been affected in West Michigan and the Grand Rapids area during COVID-19, and a lot of other aspects about autism, just mostly trying to understand and learn ways that families can get help, and also ways that you can interact with families who may have a child with autism. And our panelist today is Stephanie Sweeby, an assistant clinical director with Gateway Pediatric Therapy, who was just speaking, Lisa Bingham, clinical director at Gateway Pediatric Therapy in Grand Rapids, and Dave Bolkowski, executive director at Disability Advocates of Kent County. If any of you who are watching might have questions for our panelists, they're happy to answer them. You just have to write them in the comment section, and we'll be sure to get those questions out for you. But I'm going to circle back to you, Lisa, and talk a little bit more about Gateway. And how is it that Gateway, what are some of the specific things, more specific things that Gateway can do to help parents? And is this something that insurance pays for? Because a lot of times parents are thinking, well, this is a great therapy, but we all know how much insurance covers autism therapies in West Michigan. Some are great, some are not. And so is this something that is very accessible to parents, or is it limited?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, the coverage by your insurance provider varies depending on the insurance provider and depending on the insurance plan that you have. It is covered by many insurance providers. Obviously, you'll need to check with your individual provider to see what they cover. But they provide, ABA is one of the services that are recognized by insurance providers as a service that is effective and helpful to individuals who have autism spectrum disorder, and a good way to receive support. We work closely with those insurance providers to let them know the progress that we are making, or maybe what barriers there are to learning. But it is nice to be able to have that extra support on the insurance end.
Yeah, it certainly is. I know a couple of years ago, there was a movement to try to make it mandatory that autism therapy was covered. Do we know where we are on that?
It is mandatory by Medicaid insurance. I know that we still see variations in that coverage by different private insurance and insurance providers.
So we still have a little bit of work yet to do in order to make sure that everybody can get the therapy and the assistance that they need as families. And so at Gateway, are there any new and emerging therapies that you're excited about, that you're introducing to the autism community?
It is, I mean, it's a field that is ever researching, ever growing, ever learning. The foundations of applied behavior analysis are pretty consistent, but obviously with each individual we work with, we learn something new. Sometimes strategies that have worked for the last 5 kids we've worked with, all of a sudden don't work with child number 6. So we have a very strong clinical team that has a lot of experiences in a lot of different areas, to work together, to brainstorm together on how to teach things differently. There are always ways to teach things differently. Sometimes it's a matter of having that team to work with and to bounce ideas off of, to identify how else you can teach a skill, or maybe what pieces of information you are missing to target the specific skills of that child.
Dave, how much work do you think we have left to do in our community when it comes to autism, either whether it's through making sure that we have the services that are needed, or just even bringing awareness?
Well, I would think we still have a lot to do. I mean, the good news is we're on a good trajectory. I think we are pointed in the right direction. We just need a lot more oars in the water. You know, it's one of the challenges, you know, like Medicaid, Medicare, they'll pay for therapy as long as you're moving up. But once you plateau, then therapy has to stop. And then you start losing what you gain. And so it's like, and then when you start losing, okay, we'll pay for it again. And it's like, well, but we've proven if we stop it, we're going to lose. But not that, you know, so it's some of that catch-22 that the insurance world has. So there's those changes. Always, you know, attitudes, you know, I mean, the stuff that I know I've learned throughout this summer related to racial relationships and what we do as a community. We're always learning, you know, I mean, my friends, coworkers who are people with disabilities, I have a coworker who has autism, always learning, you know, and getting caught myself, you know, with falling into stereotypes. So it's, so again, the good news is right direction. The challenge is let's keep going, and let's not be afraid to state those needs, and you know, because, you know, I was on a school board 20 years ago, and things I think have only gotten worse, you know, that schools just have more and more challenges, and they're such a primary partner in this, at least for, you know, in Michigan could be as old as 26 before a child exits the school system. So what are we providing the right resources to schools so they can be the right partners that they want to be and they're equipped to be? But then it's like, you know, if the family comes in and says, we'd love to be referred to Gateway, the school's going to look at its budget and, you know, and maybe wince. So yeah, you know, we have plenty of money, you know, I mean, we really do as a community, as a state, and we need to continue to prioritize the funding in these kinds of areas.
Yes, I would have to agree with you. As you said, Dave, I mean, we've done a lot of work, but there is a lot more work to do, especially when it comes to making sure that everyone has the access to therapies that they need. Excuse me, Stephanie, we talked a little bit about getting the mask, desensitizing the mask, getting it so that the child can learn how to wear a mask. I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically for parents that may have been used to taking their child to clinic a couple times a week to now having to do some of that at home. So what are some of the practices, the practical applications that can happen at home to give parents some guidance?
Yeah, absolutely. So if therapy is provided in home, the family is gonna have more face-to-face time and ability to watch some of the direct therapy sessions. A big part of our program is parent training, and whether you're in clinic or at home, parent training is a part of the package, so to speak. So this allows for teaching within those particular routines. So the board certified behavior analyst can work directly with the family and identify what areas the child needs most help in, or areas that the parent has worked on, but just isn't seeing the progress that they're that they desire for their particular child. So it can be, and we have experienced that, is that when sessions had to exit the clinic and go in home, our eyes were opened on these skills did generalize to that environment, or this skill did not, or this new routine, the different safety precautions, whether it's the cleaning or the staff coming into your home that are wearing personal protective equipment, are all new. And so I think overall our therapy is quite comprehensive to support everyone who is a part of that.
Do you think that COVID-19 has put those in the autism community more at risk, not just health-wise, but I guess in maybe taking some steps backwards because they don't maybe have as much of access to therapy, or their therapies have changed a little bit? Lisa, do you have an opinion on that?
I think we've definitely seen, for a variety of reasons, services being affected. This could be parents being worried about leaving the home or going out into the community. This could be a child not being willing to wear a mask, or not understanding what these new expectations are, or why they can't stop at their favorite location when they do go out into the community. So services have definitely been affected that way. We are working hard to continue to provide that support and to make modifications on our end to make everyone feel safe, to make everyone feel like their health is being protected, and to provide that support wherever it may be needed.
Well, we are getting close to ending our time here. I want to thank all of you for participating, but I just want to give some final thoughts. Dave, we'll start with you. Some final thoughts that you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, the quick final thought is don't hesitate to give us a call. If you have any questions that have the word disability in it, as I noted, we do our best work when we partner with others. We know where our strengths are, and then we know to get folks to people like Gateway as quickly as possible. And then circle back around if you need a little advocacy within insurance or school systems or whatever to help, again, get the resources you need to live the self-directed life that you want. So yeah, don't hesitate to give us a shout.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating. And I really think that it was important for us to have this discussion to make sure that all of the residents of our community are being helped during this time of COVID-19. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.